Hey everybody, make sure to check out the 2020 Fantasy Baseball Almanac and Draft Guide. It comes with free in-season advice. You can't get that anywhere else. Check it out on Amazon.com or look in the show notes below. So let's move it to the Mets now. They have a lot of talent on the team, and they're going to have a lot of hype, and especially because they're in New York. And you and I kind of laughed because towards the middle to the end of the season, maybe in July, August, there was some hype about the New York Mets even winning the World Series. They have a staff. They have DeGrom. They have Thor. They have all these guys, right? So there's talent. They've been in the postseason before with the core. But, you got guys like Ramos. Obviously, Alonso took the reigning MVP. Then you got guys like Cano. Meanwhile, you go back to the positive. You got Jeff McNeil. So they do have talent. But I think they're always a little confounding for you. Let's just talk offensively because I know we're going to get into this rotation. And why don't we start with the good and Pete Alonso? What can you say about this guy?
He's he's got power for days. The kid can just absolutely rake, and he seems to be one of those really likable guys, which is hard to say,
For you.
about the Mets. The Mets have never been that team that I just hate just because they're the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
You just for some reason you just never take them that seriously because they seem to always find a way to mess things up.
Mm-hmm.
Alonso, my concern with him would be if the league kind of figures him out a little, which they're going to adjust. That's what they do in the major leagues, and the strikeouts might start to pile up.
Mm-hmm.
And the batting average we saw in the second half kind of went downhill a little bit, and the homers, if the Ks are going up, the homers are going to go down. He's a good hitter in general. He's not going to hit 300 for you. So, he could go a couple of ways. I think we saw what he's capable of last year, and it could easily continue from there. But I'd be cautious about running out and grabbing him in the first round,
Right.
based on he hit 50 home runs last year, 53 really. So he's going to do that again. Let's not get too far, but I think he's a good bet to hit at least 40 no matter what.
Yeah, at this point, unless it's a bankable commodity, we were talking about Acuna earlier, Trout, a bankable commodity at bat. I just go pitcher at this point. Pitcher, 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 pitcher. It's kind of like in fantasy football, which is kind of my specialty. Running back, running back, running back. Even though I know it's a passing league, it's all about commodity. And you tend to run out of top-line pitchers a little bit earlier. And then you see a guy like Pete Alonso last year hits 53 out of nowhere. Nobody had him like high in their draft board. So I tend to think it's going to be a little bit easier to find a bat, which that's your mantra. You've been preaching that, and now I'm listening, Eric. So I'm a good student, right? I'm somebody who can adjust. Talk to me about before we get to pitchers. Let's talk about Jeff McNeil as well, because you're kind of high on him. His versatility in the field, he can play a lot of positions. He kind of stepped forward. Let me read a little bit: 23 home runs, 75 RBI, 318 batting average, 162 hits. So I mean, he's definitely good. He's getting better. But why don't you talk about him just a little bit?
Yeah, he's a guy I really like, and I think we talked about him early last season,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of had that inquisitive tone, like I don't even know who that is.
Which is the case a lot of times. I'm not the expert, as I think our audience probably knows. I'm a football expert. That's what I have time to be an expert in, and then I bring you on to talk about baseball because I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know enough to be an expert. And let's bring the expert on to talk about it, right?
There it is. Yeah, he's just a good overall hitter. He's going to hit you for average. He's going to hit you, 15 to 20 homers with a normal ball. He hit 23 last year, but a lot of these home run totals are inflated a touch because of the baseball they were using last
Right.
year.
Right.
Despite all the findings, I'm putting air quotes on there that MLB came out and said that wasn't anything wrong. But
Mm.
he's a good hitter. He's in a decent lineup. I was glad to see the Mets actually kind of went with him, although they seem to continue to want to push him around different spots and not really give him a set lineup
Yeah.
spot in the field there, which is frustrating a lot of times, despite his versatility. Like him a lot. He's definitely a guy who you can grab in the mid rounds and feel good about.
Mm-hmm.
I do. He kind of reminds me of where Justin Turner was pretty much, basically few years ago when he was with the Mets and they cut him loose, and then all of a sudden he went to the Dodgers and they figured out he could hit,
Yeah. Right.
and that's into where McNeil was. Luckily, for the Mets fans, they didn't jettison him off the same way. But yeah, definitely a good piece there. I like him. He can play around. He's got some availability at third base, I believe, in the outfield, and likely second base as well. So you'll have some work for him. And that's a guy that fits into your world as well,
But
especially
yeah.
since you like multi-position
Well,
guys.
yeah, I like multi-position guys, just tactically speaking. And I had McNeil on my roster for a while. I think he got hurt, and I had to let him go and get somebody else. But I need my whole thing is, and especially in our league where we have a very thin bench, in my opinion, you really have to stack pitchers in our league. And you don't have it, as I found out kind of 1 month into the season, is you can't really stack a lot of batters. You kind of have to ride the hot hand and figure out what the matchups are going to be. And so I ended up picking up McNeil because I had like, I don't know, somebody went on the injury list that was good for me, and I didn't want to drop them. So I put him on the injured list, and I picked up McNeil just so I could float him around to different spots just to fill out my lineup for that week. And so I like them like a utility type player. In that regard, I'm probably going to change up my strategy a little bit this year. But if you're in a short bench league like we are, and if you're in a pitcher dominant league like we are, then I do like those guys that you can float around different positions, especially if they're good regardless. Then I could float around to third base, second base, outfield, or wherever I need him that day. Before we, and I think we can cut out the Robinson Cano complain fest because we just don't like him. Neither one of us do. We're kind of confused as to why they got him, and I think the manual says, or our draft guide says, that trade now looks even worse than it did last year, which is I think what we projected. But is there anybody else offensively for the Mets that might be under the radar that you like that maybe a lot of people aren't thinking about at this point?
I think Rosario's got a little bit of a chance to break out a little further. He kind of showed some signs last year and looked like the guy they expected. He finally
Mm,
pulled it off. He definitely floats under the radar. He kind of, which is hard to do in New York. It kind of reminds me of, and I'm not going to compare him to Bogarts, but reminds me of how Xander Bogarts is in Boston.
sure.
He's very underrated,
Yeah.
and despite being probably the top rated or one of the top rated shortstops around, no one really gauges him that way.
Right.
Um, I think Rosario, he's not going to reach that level, but he's definitely a good option you could pick up and should take a step forward. He's going to continue to tick upwards and could potentially be a guy that really breaks out at some point.
All right, very good. And let's talk a little bit about the rotation. Obviously, Jacob DeGrom, unfortunately, I had an opportunity to grab him in a trade last year, and I didn't want to give up the offensive player. I think it might have been Chris Bryant. What an idiot! So that my whole goal was to get a bunch of pitchers, and I had the opportunity to get DeGrom, and I didn't. And then of course he went on fire. So there's no way I can grab him now. Look, what can you say about the guy? I'm gonna read 2.43 ERA. He was 11-8 on kind of an iffy team last year. 200 innings pitched, 19 home runs given up, 55 earned runs, 255 strikeouts. 11.3 strikeouts per nine, a .971 whip. He's pretty good. So I imagine he would be on your radar for a first round pick if you're in a new draft league, right? A fresh league as opposed to a keeper, which he'll be kept on a roster in our league. Anything else to add to that, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably the best pitcher in baseball right now.
That's a bold
Yeah, no,
statement.
I
That's a
mean,
bold statement with Scherzer hanging around there
no,
with
sure.
Strasburg within their same division, right? So it's a pretty
Oh
bold
yeah,
statement.
it is, and I would. I mean, if there was one pitcher in the league I could grab right now, it'd be him.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, he's among the best out there. Sure, there's some other really really good ones that are coming, but he's reliable, he's consistent, and he's just damn good.
Yeah, and then you got Syndergaard, Thor, who I like a little bit because he just kind of had a down season. He's got potential though. In 2018, he was 13-4. Last year, he was 10-8. ERA jumped to 4.28. 24 home runs given up, a 1.234 WHIP, which isn't the best in the world. 9.2 strikeouts per nine. But what do you think about Syndergaard for this year coming up in 2020? Do you think he can get his groove back, or do you think it's going to be kind of more of the same in 2019?
Yeah, he's a guy who's going to continually pitch well, and I think he's going to have some more ups and downs. And he's a guy I look at, and I think he's going to become one of the better pitchers in baseball as soon as he leaves the Mets. Um, and it's not just the Mets in general, but he just doesn't seem happy there. He doesn't
Mm.
seem
Yeah, and that
like that's what
matters.
to be. It really doesn't. He had a thing last year where he did not like pitching to Wilson Ramos because his numbers were clearly better with other, with better defensive catchers that could
Mm,
frame better, that could call better games, which, Ramos is not well known for.
yeah, right.
He made it well known, and they made it well known they did not care, and they were going to keep putting him with Ramos.
Sure.
And it affected him. I think it affected his mentality and other things. So he's going to be a good pitcher. He's not going to be the top guy in the game that they expected, but he will be as soon as he leaves that team. I'd be willing to bet on that. Um, so yeah, he's still a good option. He really is. He's always going to have strikeouts. He's always going to pick up some wins because he's able to shut people down. But I concern about him not wanting to be there, and I think it affects him to some degree.
Yeah, sure. And then let's talk about two pitchers that they added. Michael Waka from is it Waka or Wacha? Wacha.
I believe it's Waka. So
Yeah, I believe it's Waka Waka like Fozzie.
Yep.
That's a weird pull for me. What is that? A Muppets reference?
Yeah.
Waka Waka. Anyway, yeah. So they pulled him from St. Louis, and then Porcello from Boston. Everybody's going to hammer me on this because I don't know how to pronounce everybody's name. But like I said, I'm the NFL expert. I'm not the MLB expert. I apologize. I only look at this from stats and from fantasy point of view. I don't actually watch the games. It's true. But yeah, so talk about those guys. Now, these guys, I think they've had in the past expectations. They didn't really hit the expectations. So you're, based on what you were saying before when we were talking about the Marlins and everything, I'm guessing that you don't think they're going to meet expectations or exceed expectations with the Mets. But what do you think about these guys?
I don't. Waka, he's still young, and he's had some good stuff in the past with the Cardinals. But it's been a while since he's been able to put up anything really valuable. He's got an injury history, struggles with that, and just I don't think he's going to get any better going from St. Louis to New York. I don't think it's going to change anything for him, and Porcello the same thing. The guy seems to really go back and forth, good year, bad year, good year, bad year, but it's just kind of been, it hasn't gotten better over the last few years, and he got hit pretty hard last year.
Yeah,
he's got a Cy Young under his belt, but
yeah,
again,
I thought I was high on him going into last year, with the Red Sox and everything, and then it just didn't work out. Didn't work out for him. So I'm kind of selling on him. I think he'll have less offense behind him this year, even with Alonso and some of the guys we were talking about. I'm kind of out on those bottom line starters. Let's talk about for the Mets, high and low. You thought, and again, we were talking about the Marlins, but for YouTube, I'm going to cut these up into team specific segments. So you think that the Mets, your bold prediction here is that the Mets are actually going to finish in the cellar in spite of some of the hype and a lot of, they do have talent. They really do have talent. But high and low, what do you think their best case and worst case is?
Their best case is everyone stays healthy, everyone pitches to their ability, and they win the division. I don't think that will happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. They have good offense with Alonso, with Conforto, with McNeil, with Nimmo. But I don't see it quite getting there. Their worst case obviously is nobody but DeGrom pitches to their ability. Stroman gets traded midway through the year. Matz can't really put it together and ends up in the bullpen. Waka and Porcello are busts, and they end up staring up at the Marlins. And you're looking at a new general manager because he's going to get canned after the last couple of years, and they're already embroiled in the trouble with their manager already as it is Beltran, who may not make it out of this week as the manager, based on what happened with him in Houston. So
that Houston, man, what a weight, what an anchor for anchor in a bad way, dragging you down under the sea. Not the stability version of the anchor analogy, but the dragging you down right to the ocean floor. That's a tough one. I think they should have vacated the World Series, honestly.
No.
I mean, they cheated, right? They cheated during the World Series. It's indisputable proof. So at least put an asterisk in the book. I mean, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I think you're opening up a can of worms by taking out titles and things like that, because then you're going to have people go back and say, okay, well now let's look,
fair,
at the years that people had steroids. Now we know Bonds.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's a fair point.
you're opening up a world of pain for everyone to go through that. So I'm not one for taking that. I will say I think the players got off light and there should have been player suspensions,
Mm.
but I can't taking away titles, things like that. What are you going to do now? I'm going to give it to the Dodgers for 2 years in a row.
Well, I
It's
wouldn't
kind of
say
a
I wouldn't
hollow
say
victory
give it to
there.
anybody. I would say just vacate it. Like, in the record books, and you've swayed me based on that argument. Then it opens up a Pandora's box. So already, this is the effect that Baseball Llama has on me with baseball stuff. If he argues otherwise, I just say yeah, okay. So, oh yeah, all right, you're probably right. No, you're right. I mean, you don't want to go back. There is a lot of stuff that could go back. But my original thought is just literally 20. What years were they? Like 2018, 2019, or 2017, 2018. Just have a blank. Don't give it to the Dodgers because then in theory, Houston. Which teams did they knock out? And then they're like, well, should you get the teams back together and play the world? No, 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 no. So you're right. You screw it. But I do think that there probably needed to be some more punitive damages to cross. I thought all the teams got off light, even though losing draft picks and losing your GM and your manager for years is tough. But whatever.